everybody. This is Noelle for Petitti Garden Centers, and we're in Northeast Ohio, and we're going to talk about deer-resistant shrubs today. Now, we had a video a little while ago. We did a video of deer-resistant perennials, and I might have mentioned, but I think I forgot to mention that. Just remember, no plant is truly 100% deer-resistant, and the reason for that being is environmental conditions make deer population, kind of expand and contract depending on what's happening. And if it's really bad weather, bad snow, really bad drought, hot and sunny, deer will start eating plant material just depending on what is going on. So if you thought it was a plant that they normally wouldn't eat, maybe they're really, really thirsty. They've got to get some moisture from somewhere, so they're going to start eating some leafy plants that have more water in them. Or on the opposite end, if it's a really, really bad winter, they start going after stuff that you never thought they would eat. So again, it really is dependent, and no plant's totally impervious to their browsing, but there's lots that will work very nicely. And so we're going to call them rarely damaged out there in the landscape, okay? A lot of this information is available online, petittigardencenter.com, so just make sure that you check that out too if you missed some of the plants, and there's going to be additional plants too. But yeah, so keep that in mind. Now, the other things that we look for with deer-resistant plant material is we are looking, number one, for the sharpest, thorniest plants that you can find out there. A rose does not count, okay? Reason being is that the way that roses are bred, all the thorns are on the inside of the stems, and all the leafy parts and the flowers are on the outside of that plant. So the thorns in this case, they don't really protect that plant, okay? But if you think about a different shrub, which we'll show you a little bit later, is a barberry. Barberry is extremely thorny. The thorns come out to where the leaves come out, and so a deer would go down and go ahead and start trying to browse on that plant, get poked very, very quickly. That's going to be an example of a good thorny plant. Another thing that we look for is fuzziness. If it has some really hairy, fuzzy texture to the leaves, that's something that's really good that they do not like to deal with at all. So sometimes you'll find that some evergreens are super fuzzy. Other plant materials, we've got a willow that's super fuzzy. So those types of things too. So look for thorny, fuzzy. The next thing that we look for is something that's very smelly. It could be a good smell, like a lilac, let's say. It could be a sort of bad smell. Sometimes when you smell boxwood in the full sun, they can have a stink to them. So again, those smells, those very strong smells. So if a plant's going to be aromatic in a good or bad way, that's also something to look out for. One of the other things that we look for is leathery texture. So usually when a leaf is very, very thick, very, very tough to chew through, that's also a good indication of a deer-resistant shrub in that respect, that they really don't want to have to be masticating all the time, trying to chew through all of this really tough foliage. They would like things to be very soft and succulent, and so therefore avoiding those leathery type plants. So do look for these plants, and we're going to show you right now. And I'm standing right at the base. I've got some families here that are usually very, very good as far as deer resistance. This is actually a false cypress, okay, and it's called gold mops. This is a great evergreen plant, especially if you want year-round color. It looks very small, very diminutive when it is young, if you will. They can grow up and get rather tall. What we typically do is we will prune the leading growth every season. So we'll keep those plants a little bit shorter, or if you want them to grow taller, that's really up to you. What's great about this is they are aromatic. It's not that they're too pokey, but that they really don't have a lot of substance to them. I think that's really why the deer tend to stay away from them, is there's just not a lot of foliage there that they're consuming at all. So that's a great one there, okay? The one right behind it down here, this is a bird's nest spruce, okay? And most of your spruce family does very, very well and they can be upright or the low mounding spruces. The reason being is your spruce is a conifer family, and those needles are really, really pointy and sharp, short, very, very tough. And so that family, it is very unlikely that they will get deer damage on them just because they are so pointy and tough. That would really be a hurtful mouthful, okay? So look for spruces. Right behind it is actually a mugo pine. This one's called mops. It is a shorty, nice little pine. So again, with the conifer family, the pines do very, very well. Short needled pines are much better as far as less deer damage or more deer resistant than longer needle pines. I have seen deer go through, not damage necessarily, but just nip and bite at some of the soft, longer needle pines out there, like white pines, for example. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. So just so you're aware, whenever you have those short needled, if it's poking your skin, it's probably not going to be really appetizing to the deer. Now, I'm just going to go across the aisle here, and we have got the juniper family. And these are all of the low growing juniper series here. I've got Bar Harbor, which is real similar to like a blue rug juniper, very low. Blue Pacific has a totally different needle structure, really, really beautiful blue with a little bit of silver. And as you go down the line, you can see the yellows, and you can see if they're more of a prostrate growing juniper. You can see some of the vase-shaped junipers that will grow a little bit more upright. And all of those junipers are going to do really, really nicely because, again, if you're touching this plant and you're getting poked, that's actually a really good thing. So keep that in mind when you do try to select plants for deer resistance. That's always going to be great to look for. Just pet the plants a little bit. See if you get poked a little bit. You'll know that that's going to work out well for you. Back here is always a popular one. This is dwarf Alberta spruce. And again, spruce family, okay? And as soon as you put your hand down, you get a little poking. And again, it's that short, very sharp needle. These work really, really nicely for us. I have seen when they do push out new growth in the spring through the summer, every once in a while you'll see little nips here and there because that growth is a little bit softer. But like I said, very, very rarely gets browsed. We're standing by the Barberry. All these varieties here are, I think, from proven winners, to be honest. We've got gold pillar, so you're going to see a lot of golden varieties. This is going to be an upright variety. You've got a lot of low and mounding varieties. This is Toto over here. Really pretty burgundy leaves and so forth. Your newer juniper species are a lot different from old varieties. These guys are sterile, so they really don't spread or anything like that. And they are a good solution if you are having problems with deer browsing. If you go really close and look at these stems, there is, I just poked myself, there's a thorn on every leaf node. So where the leaves come out, there's a thorn, and it's coming out and sticking up and poking you. Now, here's the thing with barberry selection. Make sure that you select the size and the shape, the habit that you want, because I'm going to tell you folks, to go in and prune these babies is a hassle. You really have to be careful when you're pruning and, they're around. So just keep that in mind. So definitely look at your tags. Make sure you know the size and the shape that they're going to grow into. If you're okay with that, let them mature. You shouldn't have to prune them at all, okay? I really don't wish that on my worst enemy, because it really hurts when you start pruning into barberry. We're standing by the boxwood, of course. This is, again, I mentioned, whenever you have a smelly plant, good smell or bad smell, works fairly well. Boxwood can have a little bit of a smell to it. There are some varieties that are a little bit more smelly than others, just so you know. Also, that very, very thick leathery leaf is not one of those things that they really enjoy. So any of the boxwoods, it could be pyramidal, short, sprinter. It could be green gems, whatever variety. All the boxwood are going to work really, really well for you. What we like about boxwood is a very versatile plant. You can plant it in the sun. And for most part, everything that we've mentioned so far is going to be a sunny plant for you, 6 or more hours of sunlight. And then also the raspberries, or I should say brambles. So your blackberries, your raspberries typically have fairly good deer resistance to them. You might see some nipping here and there. They might stick their noses in and try to get some of your fruit. So we always suggest when your fruiting begins, try to net those plants so you don't lose your fruit from the birds and any other critters that want to get after them. But this is going to be a great selection for you too. We're standing by the hollies, and so there's lots of different types. And of course, same thing goes when we're looking for deer-resistant plants. The thornier, the better. So we're standing by Castle Wall, which is a proven winter variety, and Castle Spire. So this is female, male, and they're great. They do have a little bit of toothy edges here, toothy margins, so they are pokey. I have, again, just so you're aware, in very harsh winters, I have seen damage being done to hollies, not to the extent where they take them down to just stems, but I have seen lots pruned back, if you will. So do be aware of that. Normally, they work very, very well in the landscape. Red Beauty is right next to Castle Spire. I'm going to tell you, Red Beauty is even thornier. So it might be a good option to take a look at the two, decide which ones you prefer. Again, with hollies, just like barberries, if you don't have to go in and prune a lot, you're really going to be happy about that. So make sure you're checking out the growth habits on these plants, because they can be, a little bit hard to prune, again, just because of that thorniness to them. And then right next door, we have, this is probably the second bloom cycle on lilac bloomerang. This is the dwarf purple. I think it's the second cycle. I feel like it's just come out, and you can tell it's a dwarf lilac here. We're starting to see the flowering. I think the caveat here is when the lilacs are blooming, they're very, very perfumey. They do a great job of repelling because of that wonderful fragrance. But you do need to watch when they're not in flower. That may be where you get some browsing here and there. Again, with lilacs, I've never seen them get browsed down to just stems, but you might see a little bit of pruning back here and there. So sometimes you'll have to thank the deer and say, oh, thanks for pruning that for me. We're over by the privet now. And so privet hedge is very, very common through Northeast Ohio. We've got some they're in bloom right now, so I'll have Taylor show you that too. And once again, you have a little bit of smelliness to privet. And so it's a really good repellent for the deer. So you've got the golden vickery. So that's that golden privet type. Right behind it is going to be your California green. Again, these are hedge type privet. So they're going to grow up and fill out. No problem with pruning these because we don't have to worry about the thorns. But again, it works for those areas where you want a little bit of privacy screen. This is going to be a 3-season privacy screen because they are going to lose their leaves, but typically they grow so densely together that you get a good screening from them, and they just do a nice job as far as deer resistance. You just don't see a lot of browsing on them. Taylor, if you come this way, you'll see some of those panicle flowers, and they kind of look like a small lilac maybe. Very, very similar flowering there. But it's fragrant. Like right now, it smells wonderful. Sometimes it can get a little stinky, which some flowers can. So that's really going to help keep that resistant for you. We've shown you a lot of evergreens. And again, when we were showing you the junipers, those are all the low growing junipers, but of course there are upright growing junipers that work really well. We showed you some spruce, the bird's nest spruce. Upright spruces grow very well and work very well as far as deer resistance too. I didn't show you any lower growing arbs, but I'm by the upright arbs that work. Now, just so you're aware, and I'm going to have Taylor put little asterisks here, the western arborvitae, which is Thuya plicata, is the arborvitae that you want to select and grow if you have a deer issue, okay? Western arborvitae work way better for us in the yard. If you do want an arborvitae, you're thinking about privacy screen, you're thinking about some upright specimens. There's even some lower arborvitae that are Western. Definitely make sure you're choosing Thuja plicata. I have green giant here. I have Spring Grove right next to it. They have a little bit different foliage configuration, both very, very pretty, both taller. Okay, so 20 foot and above, so just be aware of that. But there are other types of Western arbs, so we'll show you those too. I wanted to show you Forever Goldie. So this is an example of a Western upright arborvitae. She's so pretty. I love this plant. But yellow color year round, very, very slow grower, just so you're aware. But again, that Western arb is key. And right behind me is kind of a narrow columnar green type. This one's called Northern Spire. This is also Western arborvitae. So of the ones that we showed you, just remember Western arborvitae. Those are going to be the more deer resistant. Right across the aisle, we've got spirea for days, it seems like. So if you've ever grown spirea before, it's a great repeat blooming, summer blooming, perennial shrub. Really, really nice. Lots of different colors, foliage colors and flowering colors. The bloom cycles keep on going. You give them a little shear because a lot of these are spent, but there are new buds coming out all over. So do that with this plant. I've seen little deer browsing on this. So like I said, every once in a while, you know, the deer might come through and give it a little trim. Okay, it's going to bud and bloom for you too. So it's a nice option to have if you're looking for more flowering out there in the sun for your shrubs. These guys, they look a little strange, but boy, this foliage texture is really cool in the landscape. These are elderberry. They're ornamental elderberry. You've got golden elderberry here. This is Golden Tower. You also have the dark purple elderberry, something like Black Lace or Black Tower over here. So these guys have been doing phenomenally well in the landscape, like very, very little browsing. In fact, I've seen no browsing on my Golden Tower, and it's doing really, really well. So if you're considering something, you need really feathery texture out there. So, you know, a good pop of color out in between the greens, out in the shrub area. This is a great plant to try. Right next to it is the forsythia. And I kind of forgot that, you know, David keeps the forsythia out on the lot just in case somebody is looking for it. But forsythia is a good option if you're looking for that early season color. Obviously the yellows in February, March for us. This is a great plant to grow too and does very, very well. It rarely gets browsed by the deer out here. Another shorter option would be cotoneaster. So we've got a couple different varieties down here. You can see the difference in the leaf shape. Very pretty plants if you're looking for that kind of ground cover. Very easy care there. So cotoneaster is a good option as well. That rarely gets browsed. And look at these guys. So these feathery guys are Scotch broom. They are past their blooming. They are a spring bloomer. Very, very pretty. But again, this plant will grow very nicely for you and very deer resistant. Buddleia or butterfly bush. This is a great deer resistant plant. Very, very little browsing on this plant. In our area in Northeast Ohio, really not a problem. Many of these varieties are going to be sterile for you. They work really well, obviously attracting pollinators, but keeping the deer away. And there's a couple factors here again. Fragrance, obviously, when the flowers come out, but the foliage. Always look at that foliage, touch that foliage on the buddleia. It's thick, it's fuzzy, it works great. We've moved into the shade, and so for some shadier options, as far as deer resistant is concerned, try Fothergilla. Fothergilla can transition from sun to shade, does a very nice job. You're gonna get more colorful foliage and more sun, but still beautiful spring blooming, really aromatic foliage. This is in the witch hazel family, so this is gonna do a nice job of repelling for you. This guy next door is bottle brush buckeye. So it is a larger kind of oval shrub, beautiful white panicle flowers, but this one's going to be great for a shade option. And then right next door, we actually have the myrica. This is known as bayberry. This plant is really great for specimen planting and also nice hedges. It grows up. The foliage is semi-evergreen, okay? But the secret to bayberry, look right inside here, and I'll have Taylor do a close-up. They produce these lovely silvery colored berries. They're a little bit immature right now, so they're on the greenish side, but they will mature to more silvery blue. And boy, this plant is aromatic. It really works very, very nicely in landscapes. You can transition it. It's very versatile going into sun or shade areas, no problem whatsoever. More shade options for deer-resistant shrubs. I've got 2 deciduous shrubs here on the side. The low one is deutzia. Deutzia is a later spring bloomer. Sometimes comes in white or pink. Chardonnay pearls is a really pretty yellow foliage type with white flowers. Look for deutzia. Nice little alternative, shorter shrub, good deer resistance. This guy right here is Itea. I've seen a little bit of browsing nibbles here and there on Itea, but it does fairly well out there in the landscape. We do like it for a shade option. Again, like the Fothergilla, it gets more color if you can expose it to a little bit more sunlight. So that's always something to keep in mind. And then these 2 right here are evergreens, okay? And obviously awesome options just to get some color year-round in the shade garden. You have Pieris japonica. This is mountain fire, of course, with that beautiful red new growth. Fades to a little bit of a peachy apricot, and then you get some copper and some green colors there. And then this one's called Rainbow Lakothe, okay? And this is a beautiful variegated plant, pink stems, beautiful white and green and pink variegation, really, really gorgeous. These guys as evergreens will do very, very nicely. Again, thicker foliage, very good plants. Now, I wanted to tell you a story about our azaleas and rhododendrons. Azaleas and rhododendrons will get browsed, okay? Even though they're poisonous, they're toxic, but they still get browsed every once in a while. Again, when you have a lot of pressure, like the weather or a larger deer population, they will go after the rhododendrons and the azaleas. I have rhododendrons in my yard. I haven't had damage. I haven't even had browsing on them in many, many years. Let's say about 15 years. But 15 years ago, we had a really bad winter. And the next thing you knew, I looked out one morning and they had taken my rhododendrons from 5 foot all the way down to 1 foot. Okay. So again, you have to watch the pressures and the weather and those types of things. So we don't normally recommend rhododendron and azalea. They will work, but you just have to be aware of those types of conditions occurring. But the Lakothe, the Pieris japonica, the Itea, deutzia, great. Okay, folks, and we are going to finish up, kind of wrap up this whole deer shrub resistant series in the Viburnum, okay? Viburnum for us is a really great shrub in that it is very, very versatile out in the landscape. Sun, shade, can do specimen work for us, like Steady Eddie is a nice short little flowering mound of joy. Steady Eddie has been blooming and blooming and blooming for us. This is a little double file Viburnum, and again, feel the texture of the leaves. Double files are very, very fuzzy, have a little bit of leatheriness to them. The fragrance is not super strong on double files, so that is not necessarily a condition that is repelling the deer here. I think it's more of that foliage. So look for those types of things when you're selecting Viburnum. Again, there are so many different types, I should say species of Viburnum, that you want to feel the foliage. This is a Prague Viburnum, and again, very, very fuzzy, very leathery foliage. So again, the tougher that foliage is, the better resistance it's going to have. And of course, if you've got a flower that's more fragrant on a Viburnum too, that's going to help repellency too. So again, with your shrub selection for more deer-resistant plants, okay, that rarely get browsed. Again, no plant is impervious. Look for your thorny plants, your fuzzy plants, your leathery plants and also your very smelly plants, good or bad smells. Of course, if you need a little protection, there's always options. So you can look for spray repellents. You could look for granular repellents to put around the base of the plant. You can use barrier protection. So any fencing, netting, those types of things are always going to really help too. And always check out more information online at PetittiGardenCenter.com. Enjoy.